Muitas vezes o coração não consegue compreender.
So you mentioned my name, Carey Bohjanen. I'm the managing director and founder of Sustainable Finance Advisory, which is a small niche consultancy advisory firm dedicated to supporting the financial sector in developing sustainability approaches to the big megatrends and challenges and issues that we face as a globe, as a society, but mostly from the business community end of things. One of the things that we've been doing that's making waves and has been quite exciting is, first of all, an initiative in Nigeria where we worked with all the Nigerian banks together to level the playing field to address environmental and social risk issues in the Nigerian operating environment by developing the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles, which all of the banks then adapted, and we also had the support of the Central Bank of Nigeria to push that through and say, okay, as a sector, how are we going to look at these issues together? Similarly, we're working in Mongolia right now to develop a set of sustainable finance initiative principles to look at how the banks in Mongolia can treat environmental and social considerations in their intersection with, for example, the mining sector, looking at real estate and construction, and the agriculture sector. So trying to look at all those issues. We're also looking at an initiative in Bangladesh between the banks there and the ship recycling industry. The ship recycling industry in Bangladesh really has seen the spotlight come onto it in wake of the Rana Plaza tragedy in the textiles industry earlier this year. So there's a lot of exciting things going on, and these are the types of waves that we're making at SFA, which is quite exciting. Well, we've been working for almost 2 years now to develop the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. And part of the context there was to try and get the Nigerian banks to look at environmental and social considerations in their lending and investment decisions in the Nigerian operating context. And that was quite an exciting part of the work in its own right. But what we also did was build into the principles considerations such as financial inclusion and trying to get parts of the Nigerian economy that had previously been unbanked and untouched to be part of the formal economy, but then also looking at issues around women's economic empowerment, whether that's within the banks themselves, making sure that we're seeing enough promotion of women into management roles and making sure that women are being moved along, as well as then making sure that women, who are half of the population in Nigeria, also have access to finance, which traditionally they really haven't. So how can we get 50% of the market, which is basically an unbanked, untapped market opportunity, part of the conversation when we are looking at the banks in terms of their strategy going forward. So that's one of the exciting things that we're doing. First of all, I've learned, especially when working in countries like Nigeria or Mongolia, Bangladesh, and places like that, China, that the number one thing that you can do as a consultant in this space, but generally as a human in this space, is to be flexible. You can come up with the best plans, you can have work plans, you can have time frames, you can have time schedules. Nothing ever happens the way you plan it to. And that can be quite frustrating for people at first, especially if you're a planner and you're very structured in your way of thinking about things. And the other thing that I've really learned is that it's all about personal relationships. It really does come down to the people you're working with on the ground. I think growing your own company from the ground up and truly running an international business, which requires travel to far-flung corners of the planet all the time. I think one question that somebody could have asked me is are you aware of the compromises and in some cases the sacrifices you're going to need to make to be able to enable the successful growth of this business, to get these initiatives to take off on the ground? Are you cognizant of what you might have to give up to make these things work? In Nigeria, for example, in 2012, I was there 13 times in 1 year. Wow. And so that does have an impact on your life and the way you live your life. And so I guess a question that would have been nice to know before I got into this and went into this is what are the consequences? What are the potential compromises and sacrifices you need to be willing to make? That if you want to get into this space, it's one of the most dynamic and exciting opportunities you could possibly have in terms of career paths, but that it is challenging in terms of balancing your work and life priorities, but also your need to be flexible and your need to be able to live a non-traditional way of life in a way. And to be able to embrace the travel, the long, hard hours, the lonely, times by yourself in the middle of nowhere. But that the best thing you can do for yourself, I guess, is to have a good network and a good mentor.